Hey everyone, welcome back to Life and Language Podcast channel. I'm Ben. I've been drinking way too much coffee this week, so I'm feeling pretty energized today. Maybe a little too energized, honestly. But here's something I want you to think about. Have you ever told yourself, I'll just have one biscuit, and then somehow finished the whole packet? Or maybe you set your alarm for 6 in the morning to go running, and then when it actually rang, you turned it off and went straight back to sleep. I do this all the time, and it got me wondering, why is it so hard to stick to the things we want to do? Well, today we're talking about willpower. What it actually is, why it runs out. And this is the big question. Can we actually make it stronger? But before we dive in, it's quiz time. Here's your question. Scientists who study the brain have found that willpower is closely connected to one specific part of the brain. Which part is it? Is it A, the amygdala, the part that handles fear and emotion? Is it B, the prefrontal cortex, the part just behind your forehead that helps with decision-making? Or is it C, the cerebellum, the part at the back that controls movement and balance? So, is it A, B, or C? I'm going to guess B, the prefrontal cortex, because I feel like willpower is definitely about making decisions, but let's find out for sure a little later in the episode. Alright, so what even is willpower? In everyday language, people use it to mean the ability to resist temptation, to say no to the cake, to keep studying when you'd rather watch TV, to keep your mouth shut when someone says something annoying. But psychologists, scientists who study the mind and behavior, define it a bit more carefully. They say, willpower is the capacity to override an impulse. An impulse is a sudden urge to do something, usually something you haven't planned. It's that voice in your head that says, buy it now, or just skip today, or send that message. Willpower is what pushes back against that voice. Now, for a long time, researchers believed in something called ego depletion. Depletion means the process of using something up until there's very little left. The idea was that willpower is like a battery. Every time you resist something, you use a little bit of that battery, and by the evening, when you've made 100 small decisions, the battery is almost empty. That's why you might eat well all day, and then raid the fridge at midnight. Your resistance, your ability to say no, has just worn down. This idea was actually really popular in psychology for years, and a lot of self-help books were written about it. I asked a few people what they think about willpower, whether they feel it's something they have a lot of or a little of. Here's what they told me. The first person said, honestly, I think I have zero willpower. I make all these plans on Sunday night: exercise, healthy food, early bed, and by Tuesday, everything's fallen apart. I don't know how some people just stick to things so easily. The second person said, I actually think willpower gets easier with age. When I was younger, I couldn't say no to anything. Now I'm in my 30s, I feel much more in control. I think it's just about knowing yourself better. And the third person said, for me, it depends completely on how stressed I am. When work is calm, I make great decisions. When I'm stressed, I just want sugar and TV. It's like stress just switches off my self-control completely. Really interesting, right? And that last comment is actually very relevant to what scientists have been discovering more recently. Because here's where the story of willpower gets a twist. Some newer research has pushed back against the ego depletion idea. A large review of studies found that the evidence for willpower being like a battery wasn't as strong as people thought. What researchers started to realize is that whether your willpower holds up or collapses might depend a lot on your mindset, your general attitude, or belief about how something works. If you believe that using willpower tires you out, then it probably will. But if you believe willpower is something that can actually grow with use, like a muscle, your behavior starts to reflect that belief. This is called a self-fulfilling belief, a belief that becomes true partly because you hold it. So what does this mean practically? Well, one thing that genuinely does seem to help is having routines. A routine is a set of actions you do regularly, almost automatically, without needing to think about them much. The reason routines help is that they reduce the number of decisions you have to make. If going for a run is already part of your morning routine, you don't have to decide whether to do it, you just do it. You're not spending any willpower on the choice itself. This is why a lot of highly productive people are quite rigid about their daily habits. They're not necessarily people with superhuman self-control. They're people who have set up their environment and their schedule so that the right choices are easy and automatic. Another genuinely useful strategy is what psychologists call implementation intention. That's a fancy way of saying if-then planning. Instead of just saying, I want to exercise more, you say, if it is Monday morning and my alarm goes off at 7, then I will put on my running shoes immediately. Research shows that this specific kind of planning makes follow-through much more likely. Because you've already made the decision in advance. Your future self doesn't have to think. They just execute the plan. And one more thing worth mentioning. Sleep and food genuinely matter. When you are sleep-deprived, meaning you haven't had enough sleep, your prefrontal cortex actually functions less effectively. Remember, that's the decision-making part of the brain. So, a tired brain is a brain with naturally weaker self-regulation. Taking care of your basic physical needs isn't a luxury. It's actually foundational to the whole thing. Before we wrap up, let's quickly go through today's words. First, impulse. I bought those shoes on impulse. I hadn't planned to at all. Second, depletion. After a long shift at work, I feel a real depletion of energy by the time I get home. Third, ego depletion. Some scientists used to think ego depletion explained why we make worse choices in the evening. Fourth, mindset. Once she changed her mindset about failure, she stopped being afraid to try new things. Fifth, self-fulfilling belief. If you tell yourself you're bad at languages, that self-fulfilling belief might actually stop you from practicing. Sixth, routine. My morning routine is the same every day, and it honestly makes everything feel more manageable. Seventh, implementation intention. Using implementation intention helped me finally stick to my habit of reading before bed. And eighth, sleep-deprived. I was so sleep-deprived after the long flight that I couldn't concentrate on anything. Ben, okay. Quiz. Answer time. The answer is B, the prefrontal cortex. And look at that, my guess was right. I'll take the win. The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain most associated with self-control, planning, and resisting impulses. And as we mentioned, when this part is tired or under stress, our self-control really does suffer. So here's my takeaway for you today. Willpower isn't a fixed amount you're born with, and slowly use up it's something you can work with, build habits around, and improve over time. The goal isn't to white-knuckle your way through every temptation. It's to set up your life so you need less willpower to begin with. If you found this episode useful, give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Comment practice, and I'll reply with today's phrase. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.